Summer is here in Greater West Bloomfield, which means it's also boating season. But before you take your summer fun to the lakes, it's important to know what you should do on each and every trip to the water to make sure you and others come home safe. Joining the Splash Live for more insight on this is Lieutenant Brian Burwell from Oakland County Sheriff's Office joining us on the Splash Live. Lieutenant Burwell, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Happy to have you on, and the Sheriff's Office as well, because you are leading the charge in many of our communities here in Greater West Bloomfield and surrounding areas, keeping our lakes safe and patrolled over the summer season. It's a really busy time of the year, especially now that we're after Memorial Day. We're in that unofficial summer season, soon to be official in late June. So as people get ready to go out on their boats this summer season, what are some of the most common mistakes you see boaters make and others enjoying our lakes over the summer season?
You know, probably the thing we see the most out there is people running out of fuel on the boat. Also, not checking the weather before they go out. One of the things we always remind people is right before you take that boat out, especially at the start of the season, take a few minutes to go through all the cabins and all the spaces on your boat. Make sure all your equipment's there. Check your life jackets. Make sure life jackets are in good working shape. Check the buckles. Check the straps. Maybe it's time to replace them. Make sure you have Coast Guard approved life jackets. Make sure you have your throttle device. Your fire extinguishers are charged up. Take a few minutes to go through and make sure you have that equipment. Also, make sure you're always, if you are out on the lake, make sure you are swimming in designated swim areas. Those areas are safe for swimmers to be in.
And you mentioned just a moment ago some of these items like life preservers especially are a given. They're some of the most important things that everybody should have with them on their boat, and in some cases have one for each person in their vessel at a given time. What would you say are the top three pieces of safety related equipment that people should always have with them on their boat, and how do they directly each contribute to keeping our boaters and others having fun on our boats safe this summer?
All safety equipment's important and required by the law, but, making sure you have a working fire extinguisher, making sure your horn is working, making sure those life jackets are size appropriate, making sure that, you check the label to make sure the weight and the person you're putting in that life jacket understands how to put the life jacket on. So especially with children, making sure they're in the right life jacket, making sure it fits them properly, making sure that life jacket's in good working shape. We always tell people, just like a seatbelt in the car, life jackets don't work if you don't wear them. So it's important to have those life jackets, make sure they're easily accessible. So if their emergency arises, make sure you know where the equipment is in the boat. Make sure you have a throwable device on the boat. Again, making sure right before you leave that dock, you check the weather. Make sure loved ones and family members know where you're going when you head out on the lake. Make sure that if you're heading out to the lake, people know where you're going to be, what time you plan on returning, where you're parking your vehicle at, things like that. So if you don't return in that timely manner and they do have to call the Sheriff's Office or the local police or fire, that we have a starting point to know where to start searching for you. Obviously, alcohol consumption on the lake is always a problem. Drink in moderation. When you're on a vessel or on a boat, alcohol is going to affect you a little bit more. Because you're in the elements, the sun's on you, the movement of the boat, you're dehydrating a little quicker. People don't always realize how much alcohol is affecting them on the water. So certainly drink in moderation. And, remember, as the captain of those boats, you're responsible for everybody who's going on that boat to get them back in safely.
Oakland County Sheriff's Lieutenant Brian Burwell is with us on the Splash Live. As we get ready for boating season in the Greater West Bloomfield community, perhaps you're seeing this after we're already well underway and you're just trying to get some helpful tips before you make your way to the water. Great advice from our friends at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. And Lieutenant Burwell, a lot of people will go out on motorboats on our various lakes across Greater West Bloomfield, but there's so many different vessels that people may be on. Some people like the sort of so-called speed boats. They like to be on sailboats on those windier days, or they're just on personal watercraft like jet skis. So depending on the vessel, how do some of those safety measures change?
Well, we always tell people to, take a boater safety class. We offer them free here at the Sheriff's Office monthly. It's so important to understand the rules of the waterway. and to take that boater safety class to understand what the law requires you to do and understand the rules of the lake. When you're out on a boat, understanding your surroundings, what's around you, being mindful of people in the water. And that's what goes back to with swimming in a designated swim area. If you're not, if you're jumping off the side of a boat in the water, if you don't know the depth on, you don't know what's below the surface, other boats are in the area. So again, really, really try and get people to remember that those swim areas are put there for a reason. Make sure you're swimming in a designated swim area. Again, watching your alcohol consumption. If you are on whether it's a PWC, a personal watercraft, or in a speedboat or in a pontoon boat, exercising that caution. And again, drinking in moderation. If you are going to choose to consume alcohol on the lake, making sure you're not over the limit and you're being responsible.
And of course, Lieutenant Burwell, we live in Michigan. Michigan summers, while usually hot and muggy, they have their variety of weather. We get some colder days in there. We certainly get some stormy days that can be quite treacherous in their own right. How should weather contribute to people's plans before they hit the waterways?
We've had a few boating accidents and drownings occur where people ventured out on a lake and did not realize a storm was coming in. And, before they knew it, they found themselves, even on our smaller inland lakes here, they found themselves in a situation that they were unprepared for, and that storm's coming in with heavy rain, and they just weren't prepared for it. So making sure checking a weather app before you go out, so you understand if lightning and thunderstorms are rolling in. They do roll in quicker than people sometimes realize, and just taking time to check them weather apps and making sure before you go out on the lake, you have good weather, and that if a thunderstorm is coming in, that you have enough time to safely get off the water and get back to shore and get back to your car, or at least the storm passes.
Lieutenant Brian Burwell is with us from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Plenty of more information can be found on their website, oakgov.com/sheriff. If you want to learn more about boater safety courses, as Lieutenant Burwell mentioned, offered free monthly all throughout the summer season. Really great opportunity, even if you are an experienced boater, to get that refresher before you hit the water or you're in the middle of the season. And Lieutenant Burwell, it's also really important to understand that while there are some general rules and some general precautions that people can take, we have a variety of different waterways. They're under many different jurisdictions locally and across the state. How important is it for people to understand the differences between the rules in one area versus another before they get on the water?
You always want to go out on water you're familiar with, and make sure you take time to know where there might be hazards on the water, understanding if you're going out on maybe some of the larger lakes, like Lake St. Clair, Lake Huron, you understand where you're going, how you're going to get back, relying on the fact that if you have a GPS unit, it's always important to have a cell phone with you, and some type of communication. Again, letting people know when you're going to be departing, when you should be returning. Any lake you go on, there's always sandbars or sunken islands or things maybe hazardous in the water. If you're not familiar with those lakes, making sure to take the time to do some research before you go out on that waterway. Also making sure that if you are going to venture out onto the water that you're not familiar with, your speeds are lower. Certainly no high-speed boating after dark on many of our lakes, and being careful with just not to run aground. And we just had an injury this weekend where a boater lost control of their boat and was thrown into a dock, and a person was injured in it. Another boat had passed them. They got caught in the wake of the boat, we believe, and the boat driver lost control of his vessel running into a dock. So, just understanding to slow it down when you're out there, and using good common sense and good judgment out there, and understanding that the lakes do get crowded, especially on the weekends. You have a lot of boat traffic out there. And if you're not familiar with those areas of the lake, where that traffic's going to be at on the water.
And I know that, of course, we fairly recently celebrated the Memorial Day holiday. That's a big weekend for people to start getting out on the water at the beginning of the season. But the biggest day, arguably, of the entire season, at least in our community, is the 4th of July weekend. And you think about some of those common problem areas like the sandbar on Cass Lake that, while people go out there aiming to have a good time and be with people that they enjoy being with over the holiday, sometimes that can get a little bit tough on the sandbar in Cass Lake. We know that that's a pinpoint for people in the city of Keagle Harbor. So when we get to those holiday weekends, and we know that we're going to have a busy time on some of those lakes, especially beloved places like Cass Lake, what factors should people, especially those coming into these communities, take into effect as they look to have a good time, but ultimately keep the community that they're coming into or the community that they're in safe in the process?
Cass Lake is a very popular destination in our county, and we certainly want people to enjoy the holiday weekend. We want to have a safe weekend. 4th of July is considerably one of the busiest times in the Marine unit. That sandbar is averaging anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 people or more on it. A lot of drinking occurring on the holiday weekend. The deputies will be out in force again this year. You're looking at 19 to 20 deputies are deployed on that lake alone in our county. A lot of boat traffic. We certainly work very closely with our law enforcement partners, the DNR, and we definitely have a lot of officers out there looking for unsafe behavior. Again, if you're venturing out on the lake, again, taking a motor safety class, understanding the rules of the lake, understanding, and in moderation there is certainly a huge problem on that lake, is the alcohol consumption and just the sheer volume of people there on that lake on that holiday weekend.
Lieutenant Brian Burwell is with us on the Splash Live from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office as we are in now boating season. The summer weather is here in Greater West Bloomfield. It's here to stay, which means we're going to have people out on all of our different lakes across Greater West Bloomfield. It's one of the things that we love the most about our local community, but it's important that we make sure we go out with safety first and foremost. Lieutenant Burwell, anything else that the Sheriff's Office believes is vitally important for the people of Greater West Bloomfield to know that we haven't discussed yet today regarding boating season?
I think again, just Oakland County's got a lot of great waterways to enjoy, and we want everybody to have a safe summer. And just remembering to wear those life jackets. And again, we offer motor safety classes all throughout the summer and winter. There's no charge for any of that services. And again, just if people are going to venture out on the lakes, right before you leave that dock, take a minute just to go over your safety equipment. Even a lot of injuries occur at that dock when people are coming in. Don't let, your arms or legs get between you and the dock. Use the bumpers of the boat. A lot of injuries occurring right at the dock, people getting kind of caught between the dock and a boat. Just making sure you understand, if your equipment's in good working order, again, proper life jackets, and, again, moderation with the drinking on the water.
It all seems like second nature, but it only stays that way if you keep all this in mind all throughout the summer season. Lieutenant Burwell, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good one.